Hey everyone. Starting Degen Hour. This is the third Degen Hour in the series. Just going to see, I know Steven's got another meeting or two, so he may join later. Just going to really be an informal kind of session. Normally, I kind of start off with saying that, this is not financial advice. This is for entertainment purposes only. So I'm just going to state that. So whatever you see in this video, it's kind of like more for educational purposes. Don't take it as financial advice. Like, do your own research, all those kind of terminology you use throughout DeFi. So really what I thought, hey there, Steven, how's it going, mate? Let me turn you on.
You hear me all right?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, check out the fresh haircut. Looking fly.
Yeah, it's well needed, eh? For some reason, your voice is not coming through my speakers. It's like it's coming through something else. But let me just double check that. I know we had an issue with this in the past.
Testing, 1, 2, 3. Some applications do tend to like come out of my second monitor, and sometimes that kills the audio.
Let's see if that works. Can you talk again?
Yeah, testing, 1, 2, 3.
Maybe let me leave and come back. For some reason, yeah, I don't know why that's doing that, but like I can hear you, but it's through my monitor speakers, which is a bit frustrating. Oh, that's why, because I haven't connected to my Bluetooth. Sorry, it's like 6 a.m. here, people. So excuse me if I'm like, and I've been trying to like focus more on like actually, not waking up and jumping straight into the chaos. But yeah, so bear with me. Okay, so that's connected. How about now?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Perfect. Yeah, completely user error. So I mean, the thing is, we're super informal in these things, so we don't really start with agendas or anything. We just kind of talk and then kind of let the conversation flow. But I thought maybe today we could talk about subnets and the kind of related technology that applies. So I thought we could do that, or what we could do is we could do a live stream of me developing a bot and probably screwing it up horribly.
Hey, I'm down for either. Like, should we do like a little bit about subnets and like maybe it can start to turn into like, bot dev mode, and we can sort of allude to how maybe those two things could go together?
Yeah, that sounds cool. Okay, cool. So let me share my screen. Let me share a window rather.
Yeah, as you're like teeing it up, like just like about subnets, I think it's maybe worth giving a tiny bit of color. I'll start off and maybe pass the proverbial mic. Subnets provide this really cool design space within the Avalanche network where you can build your own consensus methods and really essentially build your own internet, compliant with the whole Avalanche ecosystem and benefiting from having the same potential set of Avalanche validators. So this is a really fundamentally unique piece of technology that just could allow all sorts of institutional players to build their own permissioned or permissionless subnets and really benefit from all the power that the Avalanche blockchain brings to the world.
Yeah.
Like, how do you think about like what subnets fundamentally are?
So the way I see it is there's obviously scaling, and I think a lot of people now are talking about the benefits of subnets and layer zeros as a scaling solution. So I think a lot of people on the C chain are experiencing the rapid growth of Krabata, which has been amazing, and obviously it means everyone's using it. But what that means is then the C chain gets bloated, gas fees go up, you get state growth. So eventually the C chain is going to come into some certain scale issues. So then how do you scale a blockchain? Well, you just create, there's horizontal scaling, which means you just create like a whole bunch of extra blockchains that communicate with each other, or there's vertical scaling. And vertical scaling is like, let's just like juice this thing to the absolute gills. It's almost like putting a computer on steroids. And subnets is more the horizontal scaling. And that's kind of, I mean, that's my opinion is I think horizontal scaling is way more sustainable over longer timeframes than vertical. I think we can talk about Solana. I don't want to dump on anyone else's project, but Solana is definitely more in the vertical scaling solution.
Yeah, I don't think it's like a negative about Solana. It's just different. Like, right? Like the thing is that Solana, like to be a miner or validator, right? Like you basically have to they sort of like raise the bar. Like how tall do you have to be to get on this roller coaster? You have to have like a very powerful computer to like be a Solana miner. And this kind of like means that there's only a few or a smaller like subset of people that are actually mining / like validating, and it's just different, right? It does serve a purpose.
That's exactly it. Like, I prefer not to be like right or wrong. Like there's just so many variables in this game. It's like it's just different. Although, like what I think is cool that that I kind of think in the design space is with like horizontal scaling, the design space is more unique. So as someone that wants to build cool stuff or look at taking use cases and how do we build these kind of new things, subnets and kind of horizontal scaling allow you to do way more from an engineering and a building perspective. And if I can explain that, so let's say for example I wanted to build something within an EVM chain. I'm limited by what Solidity and the EVM can do, and I'm only building an app on top of a blockchain. That's all I get to do. I don't get to define the guts of it. Whereas if I'm building a blockchain or a subnet, I can decide things like what is my staking, like who gets rewarded in my staking, what do stakers get to vote on. I get to understand the authentication method. I get to decide what tokens are allowed. If like maybe I actually have a whitelisted set of tokens where not everyone can create tokens. I can decide I can decide what gets decided on consensus. So what is that message structure that gets sent to the state? So blockchains use state, right, to understand things. So if I give Steven $100, that's state. It's like, okay, well, Justin paid Steven $100. That's immutable. It's on the blockchain. Like if I try to get away with it and say, oh, I promise, and like Steven says, you didn't pay me, I can be like, dude, it's on the blockchain. Like, I paid you.
You're landing on like a pretty important thing that like, I think even, I'm still like learning more about, right? But people think of like blockchains as like ledgers as they're getting into it. And I think that's a very like helpful stepping stone, but I don't think that's like actually the like final like mental model that people should like be operating with. I think that like what you're like pointing towards is that like blockchains are state machines, right? Like we don't need to fill in the next entry on the ledger and then have like another person also have that on their ledger for it to move forward. It's just like here's like the state of the world, and like we're all progressively agreeing on those new states of the world as it changes over time.
Yeah, and it's a very good way to put it. A ledger, like I come from a financial background, and a ledger for me was like debits, credits, recording financial instruments. And I think that's reducing the design scope of what a blockchain can do. Like blockchains are very good at transferring money, like Ethereum does it, Bitcoin does it with, the UTXO. They're all very good at that. But like, I think it's what you can build on top of that becomes truly exciting. And that's where state and then message, how you manage that state comes into it. And this is also kind of a good segue into why we pay gas, right? Because there's an operational cost of updating state. So if you're saying, oh yeah, like, let's say like a name server, like I did a tutorial, like I was doing a bit of coding last night, and I was building like a kind of proof of concept name server. So like a name server would be like, I'm paying Steven $100 for like a name, right? So I want trollop at or trollop.avax, whatever, right? But the state is that name too. So that name needs to be registered to my address. So that has to be recorded on the blockchain so that when anyone else goes, oh, well, I want trollop.avax, they can say, no, you can't have it because this address already owns it. So you're recording that state on the chain. And then you can do anything. Like, think about games. Like, this is what I think about, like, is going to be so cool to see. It's like, so like, I want to record, you know, whether there's like a scorecard, let's say even just something like a scorecard. Like, we play poker sometimes in our team meetings at Pangolin, which I don't think I've ever won. But anyway, that's but like, let's say we could record the scorecard, and then that scorecard would be on the blockchain, and we'd know Brandon always wins. And like, everyone else would know Brandon.
It's true. Playing poker against a well-oiled crypto CTO is not something that I advise putting money behind.
Yeah. Cool. So yeah, okay. So then, I mean, so there's state, but then there's also kind of like foundational elements of like a blockchain. And like, I kind of see these as like, auth, you know, I think there's like, how do these subnets communicate? So let's call it, I mean, I don't like calling it bridges, because I think like bridges are maybe not the ideal end state. They're probably okay for today, but they're probably not the ideal end state. What else do we need? So we need the concept of like a bank, so transferring tokens, minting tokens, all these types of things. And then you obviously need your consensus mechanism. The cool thing with, so this is what I also think is going to be quite interesting, is like, so you got Snowman plus plus at the moment, and all of these subnets use that consensus. And that's kind of, you know, Avalanche's great contribution to the space is Snowman plus plus. But like, do we, as we proceed down this, you know, next evolution of blockchains, do we now see a more modular approach where Snowman plus plus is perfect for like this, but maybe like proof of work? Like, I'm still a fan of proof of work. Like, I know it gets a lot of hate lately, and I've seen some like very like angry people on Twitter talk like shouting at it, and but like, proof of work is like, it's still pretty damn amazing in a lot of ways. Like, take away the environmental aspect, you know, chuck like your computers in like a solar farm here in sunny Queensland, you know, take away all of the kind of like FUD that people talk about, and proof of work still has a lot of things to love about it. So yeah, I think there's going to be some interesting ones there. But obviously, Snowman plus
like
plus
coming
is,
back to this and like simplifying also what's happening here. Like Snowman plus plus was like an upgrade to the Avalanche like core consensus method on like the C chain and the overall ecosystem that everyone knows and loves. It basically sort of added a little bit of extra randomness to like who the like first person to process it or first validator to process a transaction is. When you're talking about like, you know, proof of work and like proof of stake, or just really making your own custom consensus methods, and I guess like the thing to flag here is like, that's something that you can do with subnets. You don't have to like actually go and like build your own blockchain, but like, you know, in the future, if you're able to make a Shopify store today, that same person will probably be able to make their own blockchain or their own internet effectively in the future with Avalanche subnets. So like, when you're talking about proof of work, like, how do you imagine like a proof of work subnet, or what's like your, you know, what do you imagine when you think of that?
I don't know. I think like proof of work, you know, yeah, it's a good question. I mean, the design, like, I haven't been looking at proof of work, to be honest, in the design space. Like the kind
Or
of
we can skip the proof of work one too. Like you're really just saying like, you know, proof of work like might like, you know, come back to life in new ways and stuff like that.
It always does. Like, we go to centralization, decentralization, we go to like cloud, we go to like on your PC, like software just repeats the same trends every like 5 or 10 years. Someone thinks that they've discovered it, and it's, but like, the use case I've been thinking of for a subnet is like a GameFi subnet, or L1, whatever your terminology, that actually becomes a game studio. So let's talk about what that would look like. So let's say you built a subnet, and that subnet released a game, like a Crobado or whatever. All revenue from that game went into a DAO, and that DAO would then release new games, whether on a new subnet or whether on that subnet. But basically, the subnet's goal would be to derive revenue for a decentralized group of game producers. So if you were a game producer, you could join that subnet. You wouldn't necessarily have, so this is the thing with a lot of DAOs that I'm seeing in Ethereum, is you've got to lock up Ethereum. So you got to say, oh yeah, well, I've got $1 million, so therefore I'm putting in $1 million, and therefore I get the stake. I think that's bollocks. I think like you should be rewarded for your skills. So let's say you're like a cool game developer, you're like very hot, you come into this gaming DAO, you then get a stake of ownership based upon your skills. I don't know how you work those skills out. Like that's probably going to be subjective. And then all of the revenue from that subnet derives to this DAO of game developers and producers. And like the whole, like let's say, for example, the gas token, you might not burn the gas token. You know, you'll take the revenue from that gas token and then pay these guys and ladies to build new games. But the whole economic principle of that subnet is to make these dudes money so they can build more games.
Wait, by the way, as you're talking, send me ping me the Miro link on Telegram or something like that, and I'll try to doodle things as you're going here.
Cool.
Yeah, so I like this concept that you're talking about. Like, I feel like it could be a fun one to explore. I also see how like we could connect it to one of the other topics about bots that you wanted to potentially get into with this conversation. But let's see where it takes us. So like, I've always been really curious about building games, and like right now there's I don't know, I think we like in the current world there's no like Web3 Unity or Web3 Unreal Engine, but I assume most game developers in Web3 will still probably use those things for the short to medium term.
Well, so let's talk how that would look. So let's map it out, right? So like if I always choose that one. So let's say, for example, yeah, you got the C chain, right? So you got the big daddy over here. So like this one has all the economic value, like everything. So now you come here and you create like a subnet, you know, called, I don't know, whatever you want to call your subnet, right? Like game DAO, for lack of a more creative name. Okay, so now you've got this game DAO over here. So like this can be an EVM, although I actually think, I mean, I kind of go back and forth, but like an EVM only allows you the data structures that the EVM accepts. So like you can use things like messages to determine like so in a blockchain, the message will become a transaction. That transaction will then be connected to state, but you can choose what that transaction does, and you can still theoretically you could have two different types of state on this blockchain, right? So you could say, sheesh, that's tiny. You could say like you have like state that theoretically, state that needs to be committed, and then like state that is like kind of metadata, right? So like you could then theoretically do a whole bunch of stuff within that. Sorry, maybe I'm getting a bit deep into the weeds here, but like, so maybe what we should talk is how do we get this subnet connected to the C chain? Because that's the current like pain point, I guess, of people building subnets today. You know, so you can spin up a subnet. Well, first of all, it's like, okay, you can spin up an EVM. Personally, I don't know if I'd want to spin up an EVM for like a subnet. I think the design space for an EVM has already been not exhausted, but it's been explored a lot.
Like, here, let me start to like converge in on an example. I think that with games like Axie Infinity and Krabata, we've seen a ton of like adoption and success. I've also personally found that you know, these games have done an incredible job of tinkering with like tokenomics and you know, making these like in-game assets that you previously like, you know, used before for playing other games, like truly something people own, and like iterating on that. So if you kind of look at what like Axie Infinity did, eventually they made this like concept of username and passwords, and like someone does own the Axies, they own their crypto Pokemon, right? On a MetaMask account with public and private key. But then like they could give someone access to these crypto Pokemon with like a normal account. And I think that these like game tokens, you know, sort of exist existed originally on Ethereum, or like with Krabata originally on Avalanche. And at some point, these games will either like be, well, for Krabata, they'll have to like move over to their subnet, or for a new game, they might just be like natively created on a subnet. And is this like kind of like the crux of the thing that you were sort of suggesting as a pain point? Like they exist on like one chain now, and we almost have a bridging challenge as we move to this like greener pasture.
Yeah, exactly. So let's say, for example, I'm on, let's just get a quick little look here. Let's say, for example, I'm on the C chain. And let's say I'm one of these people, right? I'll be the Reddit dude. Okay, so like I'm on the C chain and I've got like a certain balance, right? Like, so let's say, for example, I own, let's say I own the following tokens, you know, plus, and crop. Okay, and then maybe I've got some like USDC or UST, right? So like these are the tokens that I currently own on the C chain. Now I want to go play, right? So this is the problem my missus has had like for the last week, bro. She's been trying to play like DeFi Kingdoms, and she's been trying to play like all these games on different blockchains, like to kind of do research. And she's like, well, how do I get the gas? How do I get this? And then we've got to figure out the right like centralized exchange, or then we've got to like figure out some way for her to get the gas and then get onto the game before she can play. Like getting her onto DeFi Kingdoms was an absolute nightmare, because the problem is like Binance shut down one withdrawals. So like all she wanted to do was take $100 and go like see what the story was, and she couldn't do it. So it's the same concept, just now we're going decentralized, right? So like I know that if I'm on Krabata, yeah, I need tokens.
I think these things will get like easier. Like just to reiterate, like that specific like dilemma, it makes sense. I actually met the some of like the guys from Harmony recently, like at ETH Denver last week, and they were an awesome team, and I think it's really great what they're doing. The like, but you know, if the Krabata games on Avalanche, like to pay for transactions, you need AVAX, right? And if you're moving to a subnet, it could, yeah, you could use the Justin token for your Justin subnet or whatever you want to do. And you know, if you want to move to Harmony, or you want to move to Ethereum, or you want to move to BSC, like you're going to need a different gas token as you move around. Definitely poses some new challenges. So like when you're trying to move like your you know this like redheaded gentleman and like some of your like Tussin CRA over to this like gaming subnet now, like what do you see as the potential dilemmas in that situation?
So I actually see the main thing for me that I think is going to be an issue is, let's say, for example, there's like another subnet here called like, I don't know, Yield Farm in Heaven or something. You know, Yield Farm. What I see is the big pain point is when these teams build bridges, they're going to build a bridge to the C chain, but then they have to build another bridge over there. And then this bridge has to come here. So what happens then is it creates this like
hub and spoke kind of thing.
Yeah, but also spaghetti code, I think, right? So like, because you know, so like let's talk about like some, yeah, because so the way I see it is, you know, like I've been talking about this with an individual on Discord, right? So like, let's say for example, I'm on the C chain, I've got all of this here, okay. I then transfer it to Krabata. I go get a whole bunch of money, but now I want to take my profits. Now I want to take my profits and I want to put it into Dexalot. So now I need an extra bridge. I don't believe the Krabata team, they may, I mean, I haven't asked them. I don't believe they're going to support natively every subnet that pitches up. So Krabata is going to have a bridge called Krabata Bridge, right? So like,
yeah, I mean, there's the AEB, like, you know, for Ethereum to Avalanche, like the C AVAX or CRA VAX. I don't know.
Yeah. And that's exactly it, right? So now what's going to happen is like John's going to come across here, and now okay, so now he's still got these, but let's say it's a different representation, right? So let's say now it's called like CRA, Cuz, CRA, USDC, and then CRA UST. So like now he's got these, right? He's got these like wrapped tokens as they're called, right? And the reason they're wrapped is because in a smart contract here, it's saying, okay, John has these, but like he can't access them, you know, like because he's minted these representations on the Crevata subnet. But if John ever wants to go back to the C chain, well, then he can burn these wrapped tokens and then get his original tokens back, or at least a representation of them.
You need like your little banks on both sides, right? Like, you know, you need like the little like holding area for these tokens. So like, you know, you kind of like move these guys over into the, you know, holding area of the bridge. This is like kind of how most bridges work today. Now it's in here. So it kind of comes out there and like now you have it over here, but they're like wrapped representations of the things that you just put in on the other side of their bridge.
So I'll take a brief segue to do a little bit of like kind of a thought experiment. So I've been thinking like, okay, so like the bridge wars are coming, right? Like, you know, like I call it the bridge wars. I'd 100% think 2022 is the year of the bridge wars. But now, so there's a different token standard called ERC 1155. Okay, so ERC 1155 allows you to put in all of your ERC 20 tokens and all of your NFTs into one token. So let's
I love this concept. Okay, like my like thing about this, just to like tee up Justin for whatever magic he wants to do next. Like the like, you know, everyone knows NFTs are cool thing. They're called ERC 721. Like the standard tokens you're used to dealing with, they're called ERC 20s. ERC 1155s are kind of like this like wallet that that isn't tied to an address. So it's allowed. It's called like the multi token standard 1155, and it's like it can hold ERC 20s and ERC 721s. So you can make a little wallet, and like if you have like, you know, your address like 0x12345, and you want to send it to your friend at 0x like, you know, 3579, you can like send the ERC 1155 once, and it could carry with it, you know, a whole bunch of NFTs and ERC 20s at the same time.
Yeah. And I actually think the most elegant solution for bridges would be you have your 1155 on one chain, you choose which parts of that portfolio you send over. It then gets an 1155 on the other side and allows you to exit them. Right.
So like, my question for you on this one, you probably have like a better like vision on this one than I do. Maybe you can like help me see your idea more clearly. The like, doesn't it just like kick the problem down a step, or like though, like, because then you still have to have all of the tokens that are within that 1155 somehow mapped over, right?
Great question. So no, so because 1155 includes new standards for batch transfers. So what would happen is you take your 1155 and then you do a batch transfer of the collection of tokens you want to send. So let's say in this example, you've got Taz, CRA, USDC, and UST. Okay, so now you've got that on the C chain, but now you actually don't want to send your UST there. So in the current world, if you wanted to bridge, so this is what I do almost every week, and it's the worst part. I hate it. Is I either then exit all my positions into a single token. So normally AVAX. So I exit all my positions. I then take that AVAX and then I transfer it either across a bridge or back to Binance or wherever I'm taking that money. And then from there, I then exit that AVAX and then I repurchase the tokens again. Like that's a horrible user experience. Like I'm pretty technical, and that it upsets me. So like I can imagine what normal people, how frustrating that must be for them. So now imagine you can take this and you have just like a UI widget that says, oh yeah, I want 10 TAS, I want 20 CRA, and maybe like 100 USDC. You collect that, your ERC 115 then sends that across the bridge, that collection of tokens, and then gives you a new 1155 on the other side. So
maybe
now you actually
picking though, like doesn't like what if like, you know, I add like one extra thing to like your you know, John character NFT who like has this like Tusk, CRA, USDC, and UST. Like what if he also had like pizza token, right? And like what if like the Krabat, like, so you put like all 5 of these things, TUS, CRA, USDC, UST, and pizza. I don't know. There is a pizza game now. It's not, anyways, like pizza token. And like the you put them all in an 1155. This allows you to like send them all over in like, one transaction. But what if like the pizza contract doesn't exist on the Kribata subnet now? Because like, so this is my question about like, does it just kick the problem up a level when you transfer an 1155? I guess it goes into purgatory on the other side of the bridge, so you can still get it back. But
this is why I love these conversations. Like, honestly, like, I think you really got to the heart of it. Like, so this is so let's now talk about wrap versus native tokens. Okay, so so this is.
Wait, by the way, I don't know if you ever did the like hourly, like our like not financial advice disclaimer.
I did, yeah. Before you came on, I said educational purposes. Don't never trust us.
Okay, yeah, not financial advice, but wrap tokens. Here's just like some speculatory thoughts.
So now now let's talk about a few different bridges, right? So we've got like currently we've got like let's talk about the current players. We've got AE, or let's call it the chain safe bridge. We've then got Axelar, we've got Layer 0, we've got a few others which I won't mention, but let's keep it like simple for the sake of this, right? So chain safe bridge creates wrap tokens on both sides. Axelar creates wrap tokens on both sides. Layer 0 creates native tokens. Okay, so it's subjective, and I'm sure if you got into like an educational argument or discussion with some people, the line between native and wrapped, it's a subjective line, right? Depending on your frame of reference and your lens. But for the sake of this argument, ceteris paribus, or however you pronounce that, let's assume that Layer 0 is native. Okay, so
we'll use those terms. Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, those are the terms that we're going to use for this conversation.
Yeah. So what that means is, John has if he used chain safe or Axelar, he'd get the CR TUS. If he used Layer 0, now he wouldn't be able to use existing tokens for native minting unless he actually match those projects. But let's say, for example, there was another like subnet, I don't know, like new game, and it had a few tokens. It had like a stable coin token, so let's call it let's call it the stable, and it had like the game token, and then it might have like, I don't know, a gas token. So let's say it's a 3 token economy. Now with Layer 0, you can create a smart contract on both chains, and when you go across, it will mint within the smart contract on this chain, on new game subnet, and it will burn on that. So similar to the way that like so basically native. So let's talk that through.
Here's my thing about this. Like, I think you're the expert here, but I'm gonna like try to like program more stuff into the conversation. So I guess the chain like bridging experience today, for what most people are used to doing, and I might be somewhat like, feel free to clarify or like qualify what I'm saying, but generally there's like a bridge operator, right? And like generally like tokens aren't building their token in a way such that they are the ones deploying it on the new chains. Sometimes there's like a bridge operator that's actually making the token for them on the other side to help them bridge. But the new like paradigm may be that like you would actually design your tokens in a way such that they're fundamentally prepared to be bridged, even if they aren't bridged right out of the gate.
Correct.
Kind of what you're saying?
Correct. So if you look at like in Solidity, like, which is the programming language of like all EVM compatible chains. So like, that's like Ethereum, obviously, Polygon, Avalanche, all of these EVM compatible chains use a language called Solidity. So when you actually create your token, you write a piece of code. Generally, it's copy and paste. Like you can create an ERC20, which is the standard token. You could probably create one in about 10 minutes. Hence why there's so many scammers and like dodgy people that are creating these tokens, because it's so easy to create these tokens, like super easy. But now if you expand upon, and this is what I think is the big lacking issue at this stage, if you expand upon the ERC20 and you include a function for like a multi-chain deployment, then all ERC20 tokens can by default be minted natively. Layer Zero calls it the Omni token, or the Omni-chain token. And it's like a standard that they propose that they kind of working on.
How exactly does this standard work? Like, because I kind of find myself like a little fascinated by like this like change, but in my little like pea brain here, I am imagining still that you like if we want to make the like pizza token and it's everywhere, I still need to you pay some like gas to actually make this contract on Avalanche and for that token to exist there. How does this like Omni standard work unless it actually just from the beginning to like you pay gas everywhere?
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, it's a good question.
Because like if they made like one place where you like deploy, this would be a centralization vector actually, but like in the simplest version of this, like I can imagine that like you make a the Omni token, and maybe I'm missing some of like the fundamental amazingness, but like let me just create a straw man at least. So like the like you click the button here, you define like some of the cool rules about your token. Maybe it has like a reflection where 3% like tax automatically happens or whatever, and it's like you click the button and it's like pizza exists everywhere, but you pay gas 10 times for all the 10 networks you want to be on.
So the pizza token would have to be deployed on each chain. The code would have to be deployed, but what would happen is those two pieces of code would be able to communicate via a middleware layer, and that middleware layer in layer zero it's layer zero, right? So let's say let's keep the example to 3 chains. You've got Avalanche, Ethereum, and I don't know, like what's another EVM, like Aurora. Okay, so now there's 3 different contracts, or 3 of the same contracts deployed on each of those EVMs. They all include a function which allows cross-chain communication. So now those contracts theoretically are connected. They talk via like an Oracle and Relayer network that Layer Zero deployed. So to your question of centralization, is Layer Zero centralized? Of course it is. Is the AB bridge that Ava Labs runs centralized? Yes, it is. The only decentralized bridge that I've seen that actually really is decentralized is probably Axelar. I'm not saying, again, it's back to that, is centralization
things where you can progressively decentralize things. Like there's a pendulum there too, right? Like if you want to build something, you usually like if you want to decentralize it, you would build it with like that intention. But the MVP might not be like fully decentralized, and then they can like welcome in more relayers or something like that.
I mean, like I'm quite a pragmatist, so like I always look like is the use case benefit, and sometimes you don't know, right? But like, does decentralization make sense in this use case? With economic activity, decentralization will always be much better than centralization, or at least while humans are involved. So like, I don't know the answer to this. I think, this is a very fast evolving space. So my thing is decentralization has a lot of benefits in, equitable distribution. It can still be manipulated. I look at certain things that we at Pangolin do that are decentralized and we're true to that ethos, but then like it doesn't work as well. So then you're like, okay, like, is that an acceptable trade-off? You might trade off efficiency for everything's a trade-off in life, right? And it's like, where are you happy with that trade-off? And then like to add an extra thing is now Chainlink's entered the fray, right? So Chainlink's got this like cross-chain standard, which is
it's called CCIP, right? Cross-chain interoperability protocol.
Which I've been crying out for. Like, we need standards. And again, some people could say, oh, centralization, standards are centralized. But standards create transparency. It create, like, without the ERC20 standard, we would never have gotten to this point. Never. Because everyone would be doing their own thing. They'd be kind of going on their own direction. No one would work together. Everyone would just kind of like fragment. So I'm a big fan of standards. And
I think Chainlink has like a big horse in this race too, that like I think people might be sleeping on, because like they have I still have to learn so much more about this stuff, but there's like the keepers and stuff like that on Chainlink, and I almost think that that's like a kind of like a representation of like wallets that are sort of like wrapped, similar to the 155s.
So we can't have one of these shows without me voicing one controversial opinion. So this will be my controversial opinion for today. Chainlink basically stole keepers from Andre Cronje. It's his idea. It's literally his idea. He did it, and they've now wrapped like a big corporate behemoth behind it. So
it's like one of those things where there's no $1 billion ideas. There's only $1 billion execution. But maybe the royalty is the fact that Justin Trollope just gave Andre another hurrah. But yeah.
So yeah, I mean, look, keepers are fantastic. I think the economic model on Ethereum was a bit flawed, but like it's the most obvious thing. I think it's like without a keeper system, blockchains are fundamentally worse. This is why
you got like a difference between so Chainlink obviously has an Oracle network already to like have their price feeds product, which so many things rely on. Well, let's like push that one down. Like people trust like Chainlink for price feeds and like knowing price across chains and in different contexts within chains too. But the like Oracle, the network of like different people that are like speaking across chains is already sort of there in like this like sort of off chain on chain way, and they facilitate some sort of cross chain messaging and sending a note in a bottle to like this other island, right? But so how do you see layer 0 as differentiating there? And that's interesting.
I think we need to talk about like the types of blockchains that we really have in the space, because I think when you look at a lot of these bridges, especially like these standards, they target in the EVM. The EVM's dominance is, I'm not saying that it's not going to win, like it's often so the EVM is like a way of writing blockchain apps. Okay, so like I think Kevin like referred to it pretty well when he said JavaScript was an awful language for many years, but it still gained mass adoption. And the comparison was that the EVM is the JavaScript of blockchain. I used to believe that. I did. I think I've changed my mind on that though. So that you got different building ways to build blockchains. You got the EVM, which is like the vast majority. If you go look at DeFi Llama, almost all of them. So let's actually do that. Then you've got Substrate, which is
DeFi Llama is tracking all of the other languages and stuff like that.
You can see, yeah. Shout out to DeFi Llama. They've even got NFTs now. Like these dudes are like now you can actually look at this, like you can see daily volume of like Sequoia. So what are these dudes doing? Like DeFi Llama is amazing. Like I'm a big fan. Like these dudes are like, check at this volume. So like, what are these guys doing? Like, it's an interesting way to kind of research NFTs that I found. I've been using it lately because I'm a bit of an NFT. I'm not the greatest, if I'm being honest. I definitely need to improve. But let's. So when we look at blockchains, we've got EVM, which is your kind of Ethereum. You got Substrate, which is Polkadot and Parity's version. Then you got the Cosmos SDK, which is obviously Cosmos, and then you got Bitcoin, which is like Litecoin, Bitcoin Cash. all of those kind of ones that forked off. There's probably more in there that I'm missing, but these are like to me the big dogs. So then you got to think, okay, like look at this Terra, that's Cosmos. BSC, I believe, started on Cosmos. Phantom's its own thing, I believe. Solana too.
Wait. There's literally a languages tab on DeFi Llama now. Do you see that?
Non-EVM. There you go. And you got Parachain. So like, because like, So like, yeah, and look at this. Like the thing is, what I've been noticing is like Cosmos is killing it. Like they are killing it. Polkadot's coming up strong too, man. Like that, like their TVL's a bit low, but like the parachains are now a thing. Like, and they're gonna start Thorchain. That's also Cosmos. You know, Near's its own thing. But I think Near might use Substrate in the background. I need to do a bit more research. And you can see like Algorand is interesting. Yeah, I quite like their DeFi is a bit cuck, but like the technology is pretty cool. Secret I really dig. I just think that they're doing something very unique that no one else in the space is doing. So like this is the thing. So you got EVM, but like now you're seeing non-EVM, and look at this TVL. Like it's not small. Like Terra's got what 17 billion, Solana's got 7. You know, Tron's obviously a scam, so let's leave them out the way. Osmosis is 1.3 billion. So like
everything has its purpose. Everything has its purpose.
So like
but, yeah.
like
Yes.
Like, is EVM going to be the de facto standard? I don't know anymore.
I do see it kind of being like a lot like the JavaScript of the internet, but like, you know, could be different. Who knows? I sort of tend to, it's hard to disagree that like right now it is the dominant player, the dominant language that everyone's speaking. It's kind of like, you know, might end up being that all these different chains are like Sprint, Verizon, AT&T or whatever. But like the languages we're writing could be like, you know, English, Arabic, Spanish, you know, like we might have, you know, sort of like a beautiful diversity of different languages, and maybe even those become interoperable in the future.
Well, that's
so get to like, I think let's come back to why we were like sort of having this question too. That I think there was an insight that you were about to share about how like, you know, we were talking about like layer 0 as like a standard, and like I think you wanted to sort of highlight the different languages first before talking a little bit more about it.
Well, that's the thing. So if you look at layer 0, it's only going to be able to communicate with EVM chains. So then you lose all of these, right? So like, so that now what you're doing is, if you look at your market, like let's look at like from a business point of view. I know like these, but let's say for example you're looking at the most amount of people and the most. So I would argue the most decentralized protocol is the protocol that is absolutely chain agnostic. I'd argue that's the true essence of decentralization, is getting your product to as many people as possible with no economic like kind of barriers. Like that is decentralization. So when you build something, you want to build something that has no barriers. You know, like a dude in like, you know, East London where I was brought up, like in the Eastern Cape or South Africa, can use it like with a Wi-Fi connection, or a dude in like, you know, London CBD can use it. Like that is, you know, like I believe that's part of why we're here. So when you're looking at these cross-chain and these bridge wars, you know, like currently we're only focusing on the EVM, but it's gonna definitely come down to how do you communicate with Substrate and Cosmos. Now, Cosmos and Substrate are actually interesting because they're modular blockchain building blocks. So they already have modules. Cosmos has the RBC, and Substrate has like another communication standard. So they've already got standards for this. So
yeah, like I had like this like aha moment speaking with the Parity team recently, and like if you're, let's just start at like the level of tokens, right? So like a token itself can be made such that it can be upgraded. Not all tokens are upgradable, but like, you know, some tokens can be upgraded. Like I still have to learn so much more about like, you know, subnets and EVMs and stuff like that. But one of the things that I think that the like Polkadot ecosystem emphasizes, or Substrate like and Cosmos SDK emphasizes like the upgradability of the underlying blockchain itself, right?
So
it's like you're building a circuit board, and like, you know, that circuit board is what everything else lives on top of, right? And you can like take out parts of the circuit board or add to it.
It's really quite beautiful. Like if you go read the, like, so I did a thought experiment this week. Like I don't know, I've just been like, I've missed the tools. I've so long been in business and the kind of boring stuff, and I was like, this week I'm going to get back into the tools. Like like I need to remember why I love this space. So I did a little thought experiment, and I said, okay, I'm going to build a subnet, I'm going to build a substrate chain, and I'm going to build a Cosmos chain, and I'm going to compare them, and I'm going to see what the story is.
Oh, baby.
I'm not gonna voice that opinion though. Like I'm not gonna voice my opinion on what I found, but like I'll leave it as substrate is hella impressive. Cosmos is hella impressive. Subnets are young, so I think substrate, substrate's been building for 4 or 5 years. Same with Cosmos. Whereas
there's also going to be like designed in like pros and cons to these things. One of the things that's like an opportunity and a limitation about substrates are that like there's only going to be like 100 parachain slots, as I understand. So you have to compete to be one of the 100. With Avalanche subnets, theoretically, anyone can create a subnet for like one AVAX. You do have to provide an economic incentive for other validators to continue processing it, but maybe it's like any institution or any business could create their own like private subnet, like not an internet, but like an intranet kind of in like the Netscape days. You could have your own like private internets that are actually like fully functioning blockchains too. So there's like pros and cons to all of these different like models. I think it's still like a huge like place to be explored.
It's an open space, and like if we're talking about bridge wars, then at a fundamental level, probably the better statement is layer 0. And the problem with layer 0, the bridge, is it now has screwed up the terminology for what I term layer 0 blockchains, and layer 0 blockchains are ones that scale horizontally. So now, I don't even know what I'm supposed to call them, because every time I say layer 0, everyone thinks of the bridge. But like I would classify Avalanche, Polkadot and Substrate and Cosmos as a layer below a layer 1. It's a framework for building layer 1s. So it's someone smarter than me needs to come up with a cool term.
Oh man, yeah, small population. I'm not sure if this is the right way to understand like what a chain link, an XLR, or like layer 0. Like there's certain things that are like pooling capital, right? Like the doodle we had on the previous screen where there was like kind of like these like, you had to put your stuff in the bank on one side and then it comes out the bank on the other. This is like pooled capital and how like so many bridges work today. There needs to be liquidity on both sides. The idea with layer 0 that I wanted to come back to, and this might be like there with like other protocols too. It might be some of how like the CCIP thing works, but I'm not ready to speak to these. If like kind of, even if it's not specifically how one of these solutions for bridging works, like this other alternative as opposed to pooled capital is this idea that I haven't found a way to like properly explain yet or gotten my head around. And like, is it like, I still think the contract has to be on every chain, for it to work, right?
It has. So there's liquidity ones. These are the worst ones in my mind. The bridges that ask you to lock up liquidity, because what that means is it's not even a bridge. It's just it's actually a centralized bot. So let's talk about those. I won't mention names because it's probably a little bit like unfair. But like they'll say, oh yeah, you want to bridge USDC from C chain to Kribata. Okay, well, you need to have TVL of USDC in both Kribata subnet and the C chain. And then all it does is it then just takes the liquidity, burns it on the side, and then mints it on that side. So it just uses those liquidity on both chains. So that is the most inelegant solution.
Well, those ones usually don't even like burn it, right? They kind of just like like freeze it, right? It's like, you have to trust that it hasn't been like it goes into a bank on one side and then comes out the bank on the other, right? So you have to trust that it's like frozen here and can't move, and now it's over here. It has this new representation, and then when it wants to come back, it gets frozen on the other side and it's moving around over here. But if it's moving around over here and then this gets hacked, now there's like two of it, and like one of them fundamentally doesn't have value, and one, so like that's sort of odd, and like the risk of bridging here, which I guess
that's bridges are the biggest honeypots. Let's go look at Rift. Let's go look at the leaderboard. I used to look at this a lot. Nowadays it just depresses me. But let's look at the leaderboard. Yeah, biggest hack, that's a bridge. Second biggest hack, bridge. Third, centralized exchange. Look how big that number is compared to like Compound, which was wrecked like for 147 million. Poly got done for 600. Like Wormhole 300. Like that's crazy. Like so, bridges are like the biggest honeypots in crypto. If you can hack a bridge, yeah. So that's why you got to be super careful. Like, you know, like anonymous founders, all of this stuff, like bridges are like, yeah.
So I guess like the majority of bridges that people have used today are those kind of like pooled liquidity things. And there's like a use case for that too, right? Like this might be an easier thing to spin up. It doesn't require like wildly high technical acumen. This was the best solution for a very long time. It provided a ton of value for growing new ecosystems, and it might still be a really important way to do things. I still haven't personally gotten my head around how this like new paradigm that like I think you recognize there's a new paradigm. I'm trying to figure out what it is still. So like and I think probably a lot of our audience is also. So maybe I'm just trying to like pull ideas out of your mind right now. But from the way you're talking about it, I almost sort of am imagining it like maybe there's like how can like a contract be like made in a lot of places before it actually even is there?
Well, yeah, I mean, so, exactly. So like, I think what you're going to do is you're going to have kind of walled gardens, you know, the EVM wall garden, then it will kind of wall to another garden. There'll still be communication between the two eventually.
That's the problem about the different languages, I think, for this one, right? Like, you know, if we just like you know, let's say we only speak one language, we're just like English speakers, or we're just you know, EVM, right? Like the within that universe, there's still dozens of different blockchains, and that'll proliferate in all sorts of different directions with subnets and you know, different things like that. So like layer 1s, layer 2s, layer 0, or whatever, you know, right? So like the how can like something like be a multi-chain token if like you don't deploy it on Arbitrum, Optimism, Avalanche, like all 12 like, you know, C chains that'll exist in the next 3 months. I'm just making up numbers, Polygon and like everything else. That's the thing that like I haven't had the aha moment about. But is it like you made a contract and something about that, like it stores a hash code that like this network of relayers like will acknowledge across all things, and it's like reserved at that like layer 0 level for you? Like that maybe makes sense. Then how does it different with the pooled capital here?
Yeah, I think so. EVM will rely on contracts. Substrate will rely on their messaging protocol, so their cross consensus message format. And then I think Cosmos has an actual standard called RBC. So each one, Bitcoin obviously, you know, it doesn't really have a great. But so the way I see it happening is the way you bridge or create omni-chain or multi-chain tokens or functionality via EVM is through Solidity. Via Substrate, it's through their cross-consensus messaging protocol, and via Cosmos, it's via RBC. So you almost need like an interface that accepts from all three of those, which I believe Layer 0 is already doing. I know another team were doing it too, but they actually found out this dude was dodgy. Let me just pull up this because I just want to warn people here.
So I guess like the move would be with like, you know, layer 0 is that you're kind of like making a like their MVP is probably going to be the EVMs. And that's a pretty big MVP, right? To like support messaging across all EVM chains.
It's a huge token. I mean, it's a huge process. Like my thing is, I think it's like what's going to happen is there's going to be moats, and the technology is going to be a bit crappy for a long time. But I think what's going to happen is the market will eventually realize it's a multi-chain world, and that the true economic value is traversing these, you know, digital highways to maximize yield, maximize opportunity. And those are the projects that are early adopters will be able to establish very good competitive leads, I believe. Time will prove whether I'm right or wrong.
So I guess next time, or if anyone watches this and has like the aha explanation, like I'm always in search of like the beautiful analogy for how products work. And if we should have like a competition, like whoever comes up with the best analogy for how native bridging will work, that you're going to win something.
I feel so bad for the mods anytime there's a competition. They just get like, it's like I don't know if I could do it to them. Yeah. Cool. Should we wrap up?
Yeah, I think that's our exploration for today. This was sort of like, us deliberating about how subnets will work in the future. And, we're really curious to explore this opportunity. And like, I think that's, this is like a cool representation of it. Like, how did you think of our conversation today?
I love it. Like this is why I'm in the space. Like it's literally, this is why I love blockchain so much, is having these thought experiments, understanding how the tech may go, trying to predict that tech. Like, yeah, I love it, man.
Your next meeting,
yeah, my second meeting. Yeah. Okay, cool. Should we wrap up?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in today. Thanks, Justin, for the time. This was fantastic. I'm looking forward to the next one.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. See you soon.
Cheers.